Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. It's the second most fun day of the week. Sunday is the most fun day of the week, obviously. Yes. And what is today?
National Farmers Day.
I'm kind of a farmer. I have 20 chickens, so I get a lot of eggs.
Have you ever been on FarmersOnly.com?
No, I'm married. We did not meet on FarmersOnly.com.
Jack seems like he did.
But if you did, nothing against that.
I bet Jack has a Farmers Only page from back in the day.
Well, we've been married 17 years, so I don't know if it existed back then.
Probably not.
All right. Well, that is a much more lighthearted topic than we're actually here to talk about, which is Satan.
Satan. What a
rough
guy or thing or being.
Guy, thing, it.
Red cartoon.
I somehow I don't really think he looks like that.
I think he looks like any sort of Yankees player in a jersey.
Oof.
But the Yankees are not my enemy.
That's true. We did talk about that. Well, the message this past week was from CJ, and I said to you before we got on here that I think that what he said was one of the most difficult things for me and probably other people in the room to hear. And he said, people are not our enemy. And then he proceeded to list a long set of people. I feel like he left one out. The dentist. The dentist is not your enemy, no matter how much you feel like he or she is. But in all seriousness, he made a long list of people, Trump and Biden. He said, Hitler,
Bin Laden.
Ouch. The people who flew the planes into the World Trade Center, ouch. That was, I know that it's true intellectually, but it's still hard to hear that, right?
Yeah.
But sort of a connecting thought to that was that, evil or oppression or persecution can be done or felt by you as a result of other people's sins against you. And so I think saying those two things together, people aren't your enemy, but evil can be done to you by other people, I think was an important clarifying point. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think I loved what CJ said, and we talked about it before his sermon, and he was kind of nervous, and I was like, go for it, because that's what Paul is getting at in Ephesians.
We wrestle not against...
those humans that were created in the image of God ultimately aren't your enemy. But at the same time, when you make them your enemy, you have a hard time living out Jesus' teaching. Because Jesus would say, your enemies, love them.
Yeah, we actually talked a little bit about that yesterday with our staff team, where Josh was saying, if you find, if you examine yourself and you find yourself having a hard heart towards a specific demographic of people, I think he mentioned specifically addicts.
Yeah.
Then how is it going to be possible for you to live out Jesus' love for those people? Yeah,
and we talked about it at staff meeting. There's a common teacher that the staff team is familiar of, and in one of his books he reflects on the day that Bin Laden was killed, and he says he remembered getting off of a plane in an airport and a crowd was watching the news on the TV, and when it was announced, everybody started celebrating. And at first that same feeling of heck yeah, we got him was there, but then he realized, he's like, how am I cheering over such a thing? This is a soul that is now lost. How are we, when we hold people as enemies, we then make it hard to love them because we don't do a very good job at having quote-unquote enemies.
Yeah,
and if
that's
we
true.
Followed Christ's
that's
example...
That's true, and feels so impossible at times, right?
And it does feel impossible, but the example of Christ is the God-man who died for his enemies, that while we were still sinners and far from God and enemies to him, he died in love.
Well, I think as, modern day Christians, we can sometimes find ourselves so detached from the story of the crucifixion. And, when you really sit down and look at the details of what happened to Jesus leading up to that, I mean, you really can only describe that as evil.
Yeah.
No matter how correct the people on the other side of this thought they were, pure evil. And so, if God subjected his very son to that, then what can we do with that if we say, no, we're not going to accept that kind of suffering for ourselves?
Yeah. Since I have been forgiven of what internally has felt like the greatest of evils, like this is Paul's, like, I'm a chief of sinners.
Right, chief
like,
of sinners,
if
the
I
number
can be,
one
If I can
among all
be
of them.
forgiven of this, like, who am I not to then go on and forgive anybody else who wrongs me? Who am I to not go out and love anyone else like Christ would love them?
Well, as so many of these weeks of Rooted have, I guess, the central theme of it, CJ said, how do we stay rooted? And how is that? It's like, keep your eyes on Jesus and the cross. And I know that for some people that feels like oversimplifying it. It's literal, though.
Yeah, like, this is when I said in my sermon, like, the cross is the center of all reality and, like, truth. It's like, that's why CJ finished with it, and why through the Rooted curriculum and into our small groups this week, while we're focusing specifically on strongholds. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I can only deal with what I can deal with. Like, I can't affect how other people will act to me. I can't affect any of these things, but I can turn inward and allow the light of Christ to shine into my darkness and expose me for who I really am and shatter those strongholds.
Yep, and that is the key right there, what you just said, because, again, like I said, so many of these things, when we talk about it, it's like, oh, well, that's easier said than done. And it is, but, like, that's like the struggling and, like, tension and living out faith it's not easy. And no one said it was going to be easy.
No, and I've found that in the introspect, like, looking inward and dealing with my own strongholds and sin and me hating myself, it's like only in allowing God to heal that and shine light in that, then I'm able to go out and truly love my enemies.
Yeah, and a big part of that comes from something that we've been talking about week after week, and that is community, right? I mean, we're not in a vacuum, and so, I just think of, like, one quick example that happened over the last week where, Jack said to me, like, hey, that was a little bit rude how you talked to that person, and that was kind of gentle, actually, and so I did go back and apologize, but the point being is that if he had not said that to me,
it would have went unchecked.
Yep.
Kept going. Yeah, and that does not feel good when
no,
people,
it doesn't. It does not.
us in our immaturity, get defensive and stand up for ourselves. And
yeah. So we every week this has been so much. I mean, we could literally talk here for half an hour, but this is just meant to be a short little segment of time for you to chime in with questions, extra thoughts that you might have had. CJ will be reading through the comments here. Eric will also be. And if you have any questions or comments that you want to leave, you can leave them here or on Facebook. And if you missed any of the messages from this entire series, you can always go back and check those out on YouTube. They're there for you to watch at your convenience. And we have, coming up this week is... Josh is preaching on discovering your purpose, right? All right, so join us for that on Sunday, and we'll see you here next Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
have a good week.